This is the Rich Dad StockCast with Andy Tanner, the show that kicks 401ks in the asphalt and teaches you to be the master of your own stock investing domain. And here's your host, Greg Arthur.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. This show is a theme we've talked about before, but we wanted to kind of press Andy a little harder on it because I can tell you it wasn't that long ago that I needed to learn this particular topic. And the topic we're doing today is how to start from zero to cash flow. And I think that's important because one of the characteristics of a lot of people in the Rich Dad brand is they've just realized that working sucks. And they just realized that they're probably not going to get to retire with the path they're on, but they're new to investing and they don't have a lot of money. In fact, the national stat right now is, I think it's 78% of Americans couldn't come up with $400 if they needed it for an emergency.
Say that again. What percent?
I think it was 78% of Americans could not come up with $400 if there was an emergency.
Oh my gosh.
And so that's why I really think this show is important because
way important.
Our community is, in that same boat. They've realized
I know a lot of people are paycheck to paycheck, but I didn't know that that's an amazing statistic. That's humbling.
Terrifying. Yeah.
No, it's humbling.
It just shows you, Andy, what you do is so important. And it's why this show is important. So with that in mind, everybody, I'm supposed to do this as a host and I always forget. Please click like, please hit subscribe. It helps other people to find the show. And I think everyone here can admit that the world would be better if we had more Andy in it. So
I don't think everyone
would agree. I'm pretty sure subscribe.
I could name people that would disagree, but thank you.
I'm pretty sure, Andy. Again, this is not financial advice. This is financial education, and that's pretty important. Andy's never going to tell you buy this at this price. That's not what Andy does. So I guess we should get started, Andy. We already said the title, how to get from zero to cash flow, and I put a lot of pressure on you at the very beginning of how many people need to hear this.
Yeah.
So Andy, how do people start from zero to cash flow?
Well, that is a great question. I mean, I started with zero several times.
I'm in that boat too.
We build up and I have a legacy of failure that would fill up an entire show. Maybe we ought to do that sometime.
You know what we should have?
That'd be a good podcast.
One of the comments asked that.
It'd be really long.
No, but one of the comments I got, in fact, I wrote it down for next week's show. So next week is let's see, DBC. Yeah, I want to hear this. DBC 777-2020 wrote, "Can you please share your losses and not just your wins?"
How much time do you have?
But hey, anyone listening, put comments in there. Put shows topics you'd request.
It's interesting because each week, one of the things we have, one of the services we offer is called our Mentor Club, and it's kind of cool because people follow along in their own paper trade accounts, and I'll say, okay, we're going to buy this here, and we're going to buy it at this price, paper trading. And if I'm wrong, I can't change the market next week. And so we actually highlight how we deal with losses. Right now in that account, we've made a boatload of money in oil, but our Verizon Wireless is down. And so you see the wins and the losses in the Mentor Club. But yeah, I have plenty of losses I can show for sure, man.
And for clarity, paper trading is you're using a simulator. That's exactly like
I can show you real losses too, man.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I have them all the time. Starting at zero. I think context is important. What does it mean to start at zero? I don't have $400 to invest. I think a real important context shift is when we understand what our real problems are. And I know that I feel, especially when I travel outside the United States, I feel sobered and humbled because I felt like just the fact I was born in a country that's so prosperous gave me an advantage. And, when you talk about, I could also, though, look at my life where I was an advantage to some of my friends. I had some friends that had very wealthy parents that gave them a head start. My parents were not wealthy. They gave me other teaching. So let's talk about what our problem really is. I empathize. I'm kind of an empath. At least I've been told I'm an empath. So when I see someone who's been disadvantaged, and certainly they've been a victim of something, I think all of us, if we searched for it, could say, well, I've been a victim of this or victim of that. I think also on the same time, if we look for it, we can find other people who have been in a worse situation than we are. It's just about getting dealt a bad hand. So let me start with this idea here. What is my real problem? I did a webinar the other day and I said, is the war in Russia my problem? Is a bad boss my problem? Is a spouse my problem? Is the government taxing me too much my problem? Is it the Democrats that are my problem, or the Republicans that are my problem? What is my problem? And I think that one of the biggest misconceptions of people have, they say, well, my problem is I don't have enough money. And if we buy into that from the get-go and we say, well, I can't be successful because it takes money to make money. And, if we buy into that dogma, we certainly are okay to do that. But let me create some context here on that. Okay.
Yeah, can I jump in there real fast? One of the things Robert always says is if you do buy into that, you just gave yourself permission to fail, and you stop right there.
Your context is everything. I think one of the biggest things I've learned from Robert is the importance of well, I'm still learning it, I think, but he is a master of context. And in his meetings and in his leadership trainings, he always spends people get impatient because he spent, like, context is the soil you're going to put the seed in. And people want the seed. They want to throw in seed, grow a tree, and eat an apple. But to fertilize that and prepare a mind to receive the seed, there's a biblical, in the New Testament, I believe there's a biblical metaphor that says there were good seeds. All the seeds were good, but some still on stony ground, the birds ate them. Some were in shallow, rocky ground, and they got a little root, but the sun dried them out because they have deep root. But the rich soil, in other words, the seeds you and I can offer are all good. The question is the listener prepared? They say when the student is ready, only the teacher will appear. Well, there's great teachers everywhere, but when the student is ready. So let's prepare a person's mind to be open, because if a person goes into this conversation saying, having no money is my problem, maybe they can have an open mind and say, maybe that isn't my biggest problem. It's a problem, but not the problem. For example, you remember the Michael J. Fox Back to the Future?
Of course.
Okay. And they had, like, I don't know how many, there were 3 of them, I think. And the villain, do you remember the villain?
Biff, yeah.
Biff is the villain. In one of them, I can't remember which one it is, but in one of them, he steals the DeLorean. He steals the time machine. He gets it up to 88 miles an hour, and the flux capacitor does its thing. And he goes into the future. And he walks into a bookstore and he steals a sports almanac. And so now he has every single sports score for the next 30 years, gets back in the DeLorean, comes back and goes into the casino business, goes into the betting business. Okay, let's pretend for a moment I came to you and I gave you a flux capacitor. I gave you the ability to do the exact same thing. But here's the catch. You can have all the information so you know exactly what to do. Okay, you have exactly what to do. But when you come back, here's the catch. You have to start with no money. You can have all the information telling you what you need to do, but you can't start with any money. Would you take that?
Of course.
Why? I mean, come on. If you don't have any money, then if money is the problem, then how would that knowledge help you?
All right, I'm going to tell you, this is my personal, all right?
All right.
So early on, I was starting a business. I think it was my first business as an adult. Mm-hmm. And I borrowed money from friends, family, investors. Interesting one was actually in the mob, and I didn't know it at the time. And I failed, right? Yeah. And the concept of borrowing money, and it was all in my own head that I hurt these people, right?
Yeah.
But the concept of borrowing money, which is right where my mind went, like if I had all the answers, I'll just borrow some money and I did it.
But before we get there,
Well, yeah, I'm just saying I already have my own mental blocks here.
Yeah, there's head trash for all. I have head trash. We all have head trash.
Yeah.
But back to that point, would you take that? Would you take that opportunity? And what would your level of excitement be? And what would your level of confidence be that you would become exceedingly successful if you could do what Biff did?
Through the roof.
10 out of 10?
Yep.
So what does that tell you about the initial problem then? What is the problem? Because if I can create a scenario where money's not a problem, right?
Yep.
Then that's a reality, right? There is a scenario there that you could start. Now, why it would knowing the future be so valuable? Here's a key. Because you'd know exactly what to do. So the problem isn't starting with no money. The problem is that we don't know exactly what to do. Now that's fantasy land to think you can go to the future and know everything, because you can't predict the future. I have basketballs, not crystal balls. I've looked in these many times and they haven't told me anything. They tell me about the past, a really old past, non-glorious past in those crystal balls. But here's the thing. It still does. It's not about predicting the future. Again, the thing that gave you the confidence is you knew what to do. In other words, when you know what to do, you go 10 out of 10 confidence, right? Is it that you're afraid of borrowing money, or is it you're afraid of borrowing money and not knowing how to do the right
That's
thing?
what it is. Exactly.
Oh, so it's not. So if you had the crystal ball and you knew what to do, borrowing money, I wouldn't struggle. The head trash is gone.
Completely.
Okay, so what we're finding out is it isn't that, like, let me give you another thought. It's about positioning, really. I go to the gas pump, not very often, but when I go to the gas pump and I look across, and it breaks my heart because I see a mother, or I see someone looking at the price of gas going up, and they're a consumer of the gas, and they pull out a cell phone and maybe text somebody, and they're wearing their Hanes sweats. And I think I've owned GM stock before. They're driving a GM's car. I own Exxon Mobil. They're pumping my gas. I own AT&T Wireless, AT&T, they're using my network. I own Apple Computer, they're using my phone. So I'm at the gas pump as a producer of value, and she's there as a consumer of value. And so when I see the price of gas go up, that benefits me, because you'll see the dividend pop, and it's a disadvantage to her, because now her spending money has gotten less. She has a fixed income. Her expenses, groceries, all these things she's using are going up, and she's staying the same. So is the problem she has that she's a victim of the evil capitalist? Well, okay, so you don't want cell phones, you don't want AT&T, you don't want clothing, you don't want gas? That's what you want? Or is it that she just didn't know what to do? Is it the war in Ukraine? Is it, in other words, look at all of the reasons that it'll come down to this every time, Greg. It'll come to this every time. It's just I don't know how to position myself. Inflation right here can help people in the right position.
Right.
Deflation would hurt those same people. So the core issue of starting with nothing.
Okay, wait. We got to take a break. You got to tell the core issue.
Oh boy, you set that up. That was like an episode of Batman.
I totally set that up.
Oh my gosh.
I was waiting for you to get to the.
I was like, ah.
And how to? Okay, wait. All right, we'll be right back.
Hi, this is Andy Tanner from the Rich Dad StockCast and founder of the Cashflow Academy. If you're enjoying what we're teaching here, then I think you'll also really enjoy a special on-demand web class I've created for you called How to Cashflow Stocks. I'm giving this free training to you because it's never been more important to enhance your financial education. Hey, who knows where the market will be next week or next year? For me and my team, we really don't care, because we use strategies that will give us protection and cash flow no matter what is happening in the market. So if these are the kind of investing strategies you'd like to learn for yourself, go to StockCastBonus.com now and get this training at no cost. You can access this free training right now at StockCastBonus.com. So head on over to StockCastBonus.com now, and I'll see you on the inside.
All right, we're back. Now let's have the big reveal from Andy Tanner.
Yeah. So the core issue generally is the context shift is one of what is my problem? Is it that I don't have enough money? Is that I don't have enough contacts? If I don't have enough time, I don't have the right government, I don't have the right laws, I don't have the right, all these things that make me a victim of external things. But what if you knew what to do? And the biggest problem that I've run into is when I don't know what to do. Again, I'll go back to that idea of if you hop in the DeLorean and you knew what the future was, you would know what to do. You would take that any day. If I gave you the choice of $10,000 right now, or that trip in the DeLorean into the future, which would you take? I'll give you 10 grand right now, or the trip in the future. Which you want?
I'm taking the trip.
But now you'd come back with no money. See, I give you 10 grand. See, that's where people, oh my gosh, even if you gave me 10 grand, I still wouldn't know what to do.
Right.
And the reason we lose money for me is two reasons. A, either I was messing around with something I didn't know what I was doing in, right? Which is fine because that's how you learn. Or B, my temperament got me.
Yeah.
I was greedy, or I was lazy, or I was, angry, or whatever. I had some emotions that caused a problem. If you get in a lawsuit, check your emotions and see what happened, right? If you lose money or have if something bad happens, when emotion goes up, intelligence goes down. Greed, anger, lust, laziness, whatever you're feeling hurts you. So education and temperament are the two big things. Now,
okay, wait, I want to challenge this.
We'll go more granular with that context. Go
okay,
ahead.
But education, right? I think you nailed it. Like in my head, I'm like, I get it. But Biff, he went to the future. He could trust that book.
He could.
He knew the book was right.
Exactly.
When I come back to the real world,
yeah,
I have to have that teacher that I trust and know what's right. And guess what? I'm going to tell you 98%, and that's just a made up number, are full of crap.
Well, I think you can tell if what the teacher says is tantalizing to you, they're probably more of a salesman than a teacher. If your teacher says, oh, it's all good and no bad, all reward and no risk, the no time involved, that's a real warning sign that he's not a teacher, that he's a snake oil guy, right? That's right. Really important. So let's talk about what person does have. And number one, it's threatened right now, at least in my country. I see it eroding, but for the time being, there's still a pretty good amount of freedom here. You have freedom of speech. You just get in a lot more trouble for speaking your mind than you used to, because you're going to offend somebody, and you're going to get labeled and all this stuff, but you still have some freedom. Another thing you have is you have an amazing machine that no one's been able to replicate called a brain. Even the greatest computers in the world can't do what your brain do. Now, that brain can atrophy, and, well, I'm not creative. Whoa. That type of self-talk. No, you are creative. In fact, you create solutions to problems every day. Okay, every day. Necessity is the mother of invention. When people find something necessary and they become uncomfortable, they begin to solve problems. And the creativity is phenomenal. The ability to solve problems, the things people come up with. So you have some resources. You have people that Well, I don't know anybody. Not so sure. There's this thing called degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon or whatever, 6 degrees. You're so close. You're 1 or 2 relationships away from someone who could really help you. You have a network, no matter who you are. That's just a proven fact. You can find someone in the mountains of China that you've never met before. There's less than 6 degrees between you and that person. So everyone on the planet is in your network, basically.
Right.
It's just a matter of that finding that pathway. So that's kind of tough. That's kind of tough stuff to hear, because here's a harsh reality of starting with nothing. As long as I have things externally that are causing me to be poor, it's okay to be poor. But as soon as I say, I really could become wealthy if I knew what to do, now it just comes down to learning and doing. right? And that is not a comfortable place to be, because all of a sudden, guess what that puts on my shoulders? And I feel it, it's heavy. Responsibility. If personal responsibility causes me pain, if all of a sudden I start saying, well, I'm really responsible for my own success, regardless of what the government does. And I'm really responsible for protecting my, feeding my family, no matter what other people do. That weight is heavy. And if that causes some pain for someone, then that's a wonderful opportunity for personal growth, to build broad shoulders to begin to handle that. Because I feel it. Life isn't any easier for me than anybody else.
Well, we were actually talking about that before the show started. We both have businesses with employees.
So the reason people don't like to hear the words that, well, you can start with nothing, because all of a sudden that means that they have an opportunity, and that can be good news, that can be bad news, right? Because it's very, very simple to say, well, I have no advantages. There's like, we love to have reasons to be right? We have to have reasons to be right. Harvard's proven this, and we're addicted to it. We get dopamine hits when we say we're right. Well, I'm suffering because of, it's not my fault, right? I'm not saying it is. I think we have to have compassion. Let's acknowledge once again that I got dealt a better hand than most people in the world, even though my father was not wealthy and didn't have anything to help me start off with business-wise. Still, I had advantages being in the U.S. There's other people who are ultra privileged, right? They're going to go to Wharton School of Business, and their millionaireship was deemed when they were born, no question. But I also love the story of the underdog. I think there's not, like the Ukraine guys saying, hey, I'm going to pick up my gun and fight. That's inspiring to me, because it's courage, right? It's courage. And I love the guys that started out with nothing and they make something out of it. So many people have proven it. Now I'm going to tell you something else. Let's look at Kenny McElroy's business in business right now. Rich Dad Advisor. Maybe we should interview him, because I can't speak for him. But basically, this is what Kenny does. He finds a deal, 200 unit apartment complex, and he sees the management doesn't know what to do. That's why they're struggling, and he does. He knows what to do. He sees that there's things that have been old in the company or in the property. He says, if we renovate this, and this, property value will go up. In other words, he can see the future. Can't guarantee the future, but he can see it pretty clearly, because he says, look, if I fix this management, knowing what I know about the markets, this will happen. And if I upgrade these appliances, knowing what I know about the market, this will happen. And he sees that future. He sees it. Not in the same way that Biff and the DeLorean was, but he just knows the numbers. He just knows it, right? It's knowledge that he has. And so he goes to a bank and he says, how much will you give me to buy this? Here's the price. How much will you give me? And they say, we'll give you, 75% of it. Okay, that's done. Then he goes to private investors and he says, look, if you give me the other 25%, I'll give you some ownership in this. I only want 20% of the ownership. You guys can share the rest of it, and the bank will get none. Think about that for a minute. So really, how much money of his own money does he use?
None.
He's confident in two levels of borrowing, bank borrowing and private equity borrowing, because his level of confidence in knowing what to do is a lot like Biff going in the future. It's a lot like that. Why? Well, he's kind of done it so many times. Now, I don't know the future of who's going to win the next basketball game, but I will tell you this. My son will be a 90+% free throw shooter this year. He will. He'll be 90%. I can predict that future because I've seen it in the past. It's just who he is, right? I can predict so many different things. I'm going to make a prediction. I think the dollar could lose a lot of value the more we print. In fact, I think gas will be more expensive 30 years from now than it is today. You see what I mean? Boom, stuff like that. And, I think back when your grandpa said you could get a hamburger for a nickel, well, I think we're still going to eat hamburgers in the beginning, even though they're crap and make us fat. I think they'll be double the price someday, right? And so there are predictions we can make. And Kenny has so much education that he can go into this deal and force the appreciation. So here's what's really interesting. Let's do another scenario. Let's take away all of Kenny's money. Rumor has it there was a very well-known investor that offered him a large, bigger than millions figure for his business. He turned him down. So let's say you strip him of every dime he has. What would he do tomorrow?
Go out and find a deal.
Do the same thing he's doing now, because what people don't understand is the rich operate as if they have no money anyway. The rich invest as if they have no money anyway. Debt is a very important thing to understand because it's a lever, and the fear of going into debt, it's not the fear of going into debt. Kenny's not afraid of going into debt. He's afraid, what he'd be afraid of is not knowing how to give the investors a return. That would be his fear. His fear would be going to those investors and saying, hey, I just lost all your money. That would be his fear. His fear isn't borrowing it. His fear would be paying it back. And so that's the real fear. Okay, so where does that go away? Well, I know what to do. I understand what a deal looks like.
Okay.
Let's look at stocks for a minute.
Thank you. Yes, let's bring this back to the listener. Stocks, no money.
So one of the things I do in I have a class that I'm very proud of. It's called the 4 Pillars of Investing. It takes a person about 20 hours to go through it. So it's not a get rich quick, flip, easy, 1 hour and you got all the answers to the universe. In fact, even after the 4 pillars, which you basically have as a foundation, you still got to build your house on it. But that foundation I'm very proud of. And I have these 8 numbers that I teach people. There's 8 numbers that'll change your life, 8 of them. And when a person learns those 8 numbers and begins to set monthly goals to tweak them, then they begin to know what to do. Now, real estate is different. Well, before we get to stocks, let's get to business. One of the businesses I started failed. I started a social media company called familyparade.com. It doesn't even, the domain's for sale if anyone wants it. And it was basically a Facebook back in the 90s. And it failed for a myriad of reasons. Number one, we had no cell phones and photographs. I was in Phoenix, Arizona. You guys want to talk about some of my failures and losses? One of my big failures was I started this, it was like Facebook. You put your family up there, it's called Family Parade, and kind of parade what you would do. It was Facebook. Difference was there was no, you'd have to, if you want to picture your family, you have to put it in, go develop the film at Kodak and then scan the picture to get, it was all text based. It didn't have the richness of video and cell phones, and that and a bunch of other reasons. I remember I was in Phoenix, Arizona, and I had a bunch of investors. The guy raised his hand and he said, why would I want to put a picture of myself or my family on the internet? He literally said that. And I said, well, maybe I don't get it. I don't know. I think in the future, this is in the 90s before things were big. But I started that company. I wanted to borrow money to grow it, but I started it with nothing. Now, here's what's interesting. I had an idea and I thought people would want to share this stuff. There's a lot of e-commerce is the big thing, but I think social media wasn't even a word then. It wasn't even a term. If you'd have told me what it was, I wouldn't have known what you're talking about. It hadn't been invented yet. But I said, what do I need? I need a programmer that will give me his time for free to program this site, right? I need a logistics guy that can put everything together logistically, right? And I'll be the idea guy and the content guy. And I just listed everyone I need. And I figured with 3 people, I could start this company with donated time. And I didn't say I'm going to pay you. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you equity. If you think this is a good idea and you think it could fly and you're willing to work for free, which is absolutely rich dad principle number 1. The rich don't work for money. The rich work for free. They work for assets. I says, if you guys want to work to build an asset, I won't pay you, but I will give you equity. And when we turn a profit, you get a share huge in that. So we turned a profit for a little while, but MySpace came out and crushed us. And we learned a bunch of stuff and we failed miserably. And what we lost was time and effort, and it hurt, but we didn't lose any money because we all gave our time to build it. So when I talk about resources, I didn't need money because I knew people. And one of them I got to meet. I sought him out. Who do you know? Who do you know? Who do you know? Until I found someone that said, I have the skills to help you. And I can do this. Now, what was interesting is one of those guys is my partner today. I said, you want to do it again? You want to do it again? We kept going, and he's my business partner today. And it's been an incredible windfall for us to stick with it, to start with zero, if that makes sense. So business, you can leverage technology. I wrote a book called 401 Chaos. It was my first book. Do you know how much it cost me? I self-published on that one. And I did it on something called Kindle Direct. Do you know what it costs to upload something on Kindle Direct?
Zero.
It takes time and energy and knowing what to say and having something valuable, some education to share with people. And if you get 4 to 5 stars on that, now you have an asset built out of nothing because you gave value to someone. You had something, all these efforts were to create some value for people, right? So real estate is very much about knowing what you're doing in debt. Business is very much about knowing what you're doing and leverage by people or leverage by debt or leverage by technology, right? And, you know, I have a course called How the Rich Invest with No Money, where I spend about 8 hours teaching these things we're talking about. Now, stocks is a little different. Stocks is one where it takes a little money to make money. I don't know of any stock trade where you could open an account with zero, but here's what's interesting. You can open up a paper trade account with zero. Now, this is a really interesting thing. People that don't have what did you say? They don't have $400 to spend on stuff.
Right.
Okay. But do they have a cell phone?
Yep.
Do they have a Netflix account?
Probably.
I mean, are 78% of Americans don't have cell phones? 78% of Americans are not on Netflix. 78% of Americans have no luxuries. You going to tell me that statistic too? 78% of them can't come up with $400. 78% of them don't even have that on their credit card. Why? If you don't have $400 limit on your credit card for an emergency, that means you've been buying what? Doodads. Not everybody, but a lot of them are buying doodads. I don't know what percent of that 78%, but here's the deal. Let's say you paper traded, Greg, for a while. And let's say you spend a year with me, okay? You got your whole life ahead of you. You can spend 1 year with me. And you watch Noah Davidson, my lead trainer in my mentor club, and you just practice on paper, which costs you what?
Zero.
But you'd start to learn what to do.
You get the experience you were talking about with Kenny.
And then all of a sudden you start making paper trades where you're like, you know, if I just had $1,000 here, if I'd had a real $1,000 in here, I would have made X amount. And if I'd had a real $500 in here, I would have made X amount. What does that do to your mind when someone gives you an opportunity on late night TV to call up and buy something? What does that do in the grocery store? What does that do when you want to buy a doodad? Now it's competing against assets in your mind. And where you spend your money begins to change. And all of a sudden you look at compounding. And compounding is about money, rate, and time. What gives you rate? Knowledge. Money, rate, and time. The most important two are not the money, it's the rate and the time. If you want to play with a compounding formula, change the amount of money you start with and see what happens, but then change the rate and the amount of time you compound it, and then see what happens in that formula of money, rate, and time. So all of a sudden, if you have nothing, you learn those 8 numbers, you start learning what to do, and you'll be surprised at where all of a sudden you think, you know, I did this once just for fun. I moved and I said, Marcy, anything in the garage we haven't touched in a year, we're just going to put normally I would donate this stuff to Goodwill or Desert Industries or, you know, Salvation Army. I'm a donator. I'm not a big guy to put something up on. It's not worth my time to sell stuff on eBay. But I said, let's pretend that we didn't have anything. Let's just see how much trash we could turn back into cash. We had like $5,000 in 2 days, just junk. And so, you know, starting with nothing, I understand and I empathize. But yeah, but Andy this, yeah, but Andy that, yeah, but Andy. I'm just telling you, if a person knew what to do, if you feel confident in knowing what to do, then that helps a lot. And here's what's crazy. Don't make me come across like I know everything to do. I just think I know enough right now. I get it wrong. I lose money. I make mistakes. And that's another thing. A lot of people are afraid to start with nothing because they don't know what to do. And guess what? That's kind of where you have to start. Because how do you learn what to do? Making mistakes, trying, getting educated, and, you know, hanging out with guys like you and Robert. You're going to make mistakes, but that's how you learn what to do. There is no DeLorean. So the reason people don't like to hear that is it's not an easy fix. It's not a panacea. It's not something for nothing. It's not a free, oh, you're going to, you know, snap your fingers and you're wealthy. It's about personal development. It's about a grind. It's about mistakes. It's about, you know, people attacking you, all kinds of stuff. It's about personal development and trying to grow that strength. And I'm in my 50s. And I'm still don't feel like I'm tough. I still feel like, you know, boom, I get hit and I'm like, oh my gosh, another one? Really? Haven't I figured this out yet? So it's not, I don't think you get to where you just sit on the beach with an umbrella in your drink and say, oh yeah, I've arrived now. I mean, you're always learning. So I don't know if that's helpful, but here's how you start with nothing. You say, what is my real problem? Is my problem if I had the right connections? Oh, well, maybe I do, right? When I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad with my wife, when we'd go to bed, we each had a copy and we'd read a chapter a night, you know, trading off pages. I just wish I had the communication talent to communicate to people how freaking average I am. Like I am like the most average dude. No one that I knew would ever tell you in high school or college, would ever tell you, yeah, Robert Kiyosaki is going to choose him to be a Rich Dad advisor for pay. I guarantee you no one would have believed that. And when I was sitting in that, reading that thing and our life started to change and I started to learn what to do, buy assets. I started to learn what to do. Man, my life got more painful because the mistakes I was about to make, I had no idea about how much pain was going to come when I read that book. But I also never imagined that someday Robert would call me on the phone and say, hey, I hear you've been learning a lot about stocks. You give a pretty good stock speech. Why don't you come to my event? And that's where you and I met for the first time, right? You know, I came in there, my eyes this big. It's like, oh my gosh, what have I gotten into here, right?
Yep.
And yet over this time, you continue to learn, you continue to grow. And you just take risk and you take those punches. So starting with nothing is about understanding what your problem really is. Have other people started with nothing? Yes, they have. Well, how did they do it? They started taking actions. They started learning. They started talking. They started making mistakes. They started failing. You call someone up and you say, hey, programmer, I want to start an online business and I don't want to use Wix or whatever. I want to use a nice one. Be a partner with me. They say no. That's the end for most people. Well, see, I tried and keep going, man. Keep freaking going. So I don't know if that's what people want to hear, but that's what I believe the reality of it is. But there's a lot of inspiration that can happen when a person's context does shift. They say, you know what? I do have my freedom. You know what? I can't. Try this out if you want to go into business. Try this out. Get a piece of paper and let's write down 16 things. First 4, write down 4 of your favorite activities. Second 4, write down 4 people that you either know that are well off or that you'd like to know that are well off. Okay, 4 people that you know, preferably you know them. But if not, okay, who would you like to know? Okay, write down 4 of your favorite hobbies, which is different than an activity, 4 of your favorite hobbies. And then write down, this is the toughest one for people in the exercise. Write down 4 personal strengths. And that's where people struggle. To confess that you're powerful. It's hard for me to do that one, you know, to say, because it makes you feel arrogant or prideful. But you know what? If you were blessed with something, a talent, go ahead and write it down. Maybe you're a good communicator, or maybe you're a good listener, right? Maybe you are an empath, right? Maybe you have compassion. Whatever your talents are, write them down. If you got more than 4, great. So there's 16 things. Someone has already done $1 million idea with something on that paper, already done it. And there's going to be more people join the fray, right? There's $1 million idea on the paper, and you get to do something that you love and something you enjoy with someone you like, with the strength that is yours. I did that exercise, and that's why I started the Cash Flow Academy. I didn't start a Cash Flow Academy because I was beating Warren Buffett in an investing contest, because very few people do that. I started the Cash Flow Academy because I wrote down one of my personal strengths is I'm a good communicator. I simplify things, and people have told me that when they hang out, they get inspired and they feel energy, and they find that extra gear, and I make it simple. So I said, I should be a teacher. I should be a teacher. Problem is I didn't know anything. Okay, what do I want to teach? What am I interested in? I'm interested in money. I'm interested in how someone gets out of the rat race. I always wanted to be out of it. So how do you do that? And so I began to study and I began to work. Now, everyone has a different path, right? But that's what I feel. I feel like understanding that my problem isn't these external things. My problem is I don't know what to do. It's always an educational issue.
Right.
Once you have that, you can move forward.
Well, thank you, Andy. Really appreciate it. You definitely you removed the excuses, the victim mentality.
People don't like that. People don't like that.
But maybe they do. Maybe somebody on this show was listening and thought to themselves, that's me.
Well, for some people, it triggered them, right? Well, he's mean, and he's, I am a true victim, and well, yeah, I get that. All of us have stuff,
Sure.
Whether it's your health, health challenges in your family, or, divorce, or whatever comes, we all have it. We really do. It's how you respond to victimhood that makes you a champion. When you refuse to be one, you're still one, but you just refuse to be one. That's a big deal. So it's not always good people don't like that. They don't like it.
That's okay. It's a great
thumbs down. A lot of people thumbs down, no compassion. No, we have compassion. That's why we do it, to help grab them and pull them up.
Well, thank you, Andy. Next week, we get to talk about all your mistakes.
Oh my gosh.
That'll be a blast.
That. Oh, that's going to be a nightmare. I'll have to find a therapist.
Thanks, Andy. We'll see you later.
Take care. All right.